So thanks everyone for joining us. I'm Sarah Fellner, our VP of Marketing here at PKWARE. Today we have EJ Pappas, Field CTO here at PKWARE for preemptive data protection, third-party risk, AI, and more. If you have any questions, please feel free to drop those in the chat. Otherwise, yeah, enjoy the webinar. EJ, I'll pass it over to you.
I like the yeah, always, Sarah. Thanks for that one. Let's go to the agenda. So the purpose of today, hi everybody, and I hope you're all having a good day, wherever you are and however you are. The conversation we're going to have today is really about third-party risk and preemptive and proactive data protection that exists in the marketplace. So the first thing I want to do is I want to kind of talk a little bit in general about data security itself and what it means to enterprise organizations in general. The second thing is we talk about third party. It's not only worrying about the what that you're sharing, but it's where you're sharing it, and maybe asking those questions about why you're sharing that information in the first place. Third thing we're going to kind of approach is understanding how you protect that data, and that the perimeter is no longer the only way and the safest way to be able to deal with it. And perhaps talking about a data-centric approach may be a better way of doing it. Whenever we talk about protection and we talk about identifying and making data safe, encryption comes up. And I want to just reiterate with you today that encryption isn't scary, it certainly isn't new, and it is something that we should consider as much as we can when we deal with data. And then the last time is just talk about some of the adventures that exist within the marketplace. So that's what we'll talk about. Next slide. I am from PKWARE. I'm the field CTO from PKWARE. PKWARE, first off, is that company. As you start looking at the screen and going, is it PKWARE? Yep, we are that 40-year-old company that started with the command line compression product that existed. We have grown into a data security company that has focused on data protection, both on prem, on endpoints, on file servers, anywhere within your organization, including cloud repositories, mainframes, and Hadoop. We serve some of the largest banks and financial institutions, insurance companies, and healthcare organizations in the world. They use us every day to identify their data, protect their data, and make sure that their organizations are not only safe, but can be productive so that we can provide you security and protections while staying out of the way of making your job be what it is. And the last thing, as I just kind of talked about it again, is that we both discover and protect. So the same product that allows you to find that data, allows you to fix it. And we do this. We are unique in that space, and Gartner thinks so too. And so Gartner gave us a little plug, and we appreciate that piece. So when I was thinking about this presentation yesterday and kind of doom scrolling through Blue Sky and figuring out what was happening, Bloomberg gave me the little gift that keeps on giving, which was JPMC and Bank of New York Mellon had a lovely little problem with the OCC sharing third-party data, where hackers got access to over 100 accounts and looked at it for over a year. They were sharing data, looking at not only sensitive information, but their security records, their cybersecurity ideas, their threats that happened within those organizations. So bad stuff in general. That was as of this month. That is the problem that happened of this month. If you looked over the last year, there were hundreds of breaches that occurred. Some of the big ones that we talked about on here, things like the Snowflake breach, which talked about AT&T losing 110 million records of home addresses, phone numbers, et cetera, from customers that happened to be there. The Change Healthcare breach, which was, again, a spectacular fail of 145 million medical records. We worry about our sensitive information falling into the wrong hands. This is the weakest link that we have within our organization, which is our own personal information that happened to go. And then last is the last one just highlighting here is we're talking about the Dell portal, which is a blatant third-party flaw. So a third-party credentialed had a problem via a phishing campaign, and their private data from a very, very secure organization was flawed and lost. So what does that mean? It means on an average cost of $9.4 million a year in terms of losing a breach. And that's also on that good bad scale, that's falling on the bad scale. We don't want to be able to do that stuff. So what do we need to do? How do we need to worry about protecting information? So first and foremost, at PKWARE, we believe that you need to protect this information at where the data is created, as data is created, as we begin the journey. So we talk about this being foundation level protection. A lot of times in the old days, the good old days, when we talked about DLP being the solution for these kinds of problems, we talked about an outside in approach. We talked about keeping that perimeter safe, keeping that outside boundary protected so that the bad guys couldn't get in. What we talk about is having an inside out approach, starting where the data lives, where the data is created, and protecting it there, identifying it, protecting it there, and then allowing it to flow safely throughout your organization and not worry about where it is being sent or how it is being sent, because the data itself had already been identified and your protection policies have already been put in place. So what we talk about is the two things. Discovery and protection go hand in hand. If your product that you are using to find the information in your organization doesn't protect it, all you're doing is creating more work for yourself and creating a burden for your internal security organizations to have to fix the things that you're finding. There's always gaps. There's always differences. If you're using more than one product to solve the discovery problem, if you've got a different problem on your endpoints and on your file servers versus your cloud repositories, say it again, your cloud repositories or your databases or your large data sets or your mainframe, if you have different products to do that, then you've got to normalize all that data. You've got to make sure that a credit card is a credit card is a credit card before you can even go into the business of protecting it. So we want to make sure that both of those things happen at the same way and talk about the way that we can best protect that stuff. So next slide. What's the best way to protect your information that you have? The best way to protect it is encrypting that data. So encryption isn't new. We've been encrypting data for almost 20 years within our product set. Why do we protect it that way? Well, number one, it keeps your sensitive data safe, right? It's good for you. If you're allowing yourself to be able to keep your data identified and then protected via encryption, it means that bad guys can't see it. It means that it is always going to be safe, and the only people that have access to it are the people that should have access to it. So that's good, right? Secondly, if you're in a regulated industry, it's the law. It's what you should do. It's what you have to do to stay out of the focus of your auditors or your regulatory folks. So whether it's HIPAA, whether it's PCI, whether it's GDPR, everybody is requiring it. If you are reminded of this or wondering about this, PCI 4.0 talked about data in motion. It was one of the big things of that era, of that particular piece of legislation. The latest HIPAA rulings came out in November, talked about motion. That was the big piece of that. We have to worry about data not only staying in place. Encryption at rest is good. We should do encryption at rest. We should do encryption on disk. It's important, but data moves. Data never stays in the same place. And because it's always moving, we have to be better about worrying about what that happens to be. Last two things is that if we encrypt data and we are sharing data outside, what that does is a very simple statement is that it makes your customers trust you more. It makes your customers know that you're worried about what they're sending is sensitive and that it's important to them to protect the information that you have. Since we are littered with breaches all around the area, what's the difference? Why do you go from one company to another company? Why do you worry about which bank you're using their application online for, or which healthcare organization that you're doing? You go to your doctor, you go to a portal, you want to make sure that that data is protected and safe. You need to have that information encrypted to have that security that exists within your own organization and within yourself. And lastly, if your data is encrypted at an organizational level, if your organization is breached, when your organization is breached, the sensitive data is already protected. Your data is not going to be pulled out and then taken and used for some nefarious reason. The other thing that breaches cause is that breaches, when you're ransomed in organization, they stop you and ask you for a ransom for the first time to get access to your data again, and then the second time they will come back and say, I'm going to share your data unless you pay us again. So what does encryption do? It eliminates all of these problems, right? On that good-bad scale, it just simply is good. So what is the next logical way that we start talking about um, safety and protection of your data? It's AI. So everybody, you guys can pull your bingo cards out. I did say AI. I am going to say quantum in this conversation too, so we can check all those little boxes. We've talked about data protection. I said DLP. I've got AI. We'll see who's going to be the winner at the end of the day in terms of all the buzzwords that we use. But AI becomes a natural component to uh, what is the next great threat that we all deal with. So the first one that we talk about is around data exposure. And so, what is the burden that exists within AI? The first problem or challenge that AI increases in terms of your data risk, the data risk inside of your organization, is that it is an expanded attack surface, right? You are thinking about the data that you have on-prem, in file shares, on your endpoints, maybe in your cloud repositories. But what about the data that you were taking to learn, to help your models learn and be more effective? You're trying to educate or increase the accuracy of those models. That data that's going in is now a lake of information that could potentially be stolen, breached, or compromised. So AI is easy, is pointing AI models at these issues are an important way of being able to worry about protection. The second thing that we worry about is the complexity about the attacks, right? Now AI is pushing more and more information at us. The phishing attacks become more complex and more complicated. Deepfakes exist now. Deepfakes is a terrifying method for us to be able to have, whether your phone sounds like somebody that you know, whether those emails are feeling like somebody that you recognize and are dealing with before. It's very, very difficult in terms of your organizations keeping track of those things. Vulnerabilities within the system. So wondering about just simple common brute force attacks become more complex and more difficult because of the fact that AI can work hard, work intelligently, and never ever stops. It is the cancer that exists inside of these organizations that will continually work towards moving forward and making life difficulty. And then the last thing, as we talk about response speed, we're really worrying about protecting your private information. So what can we do to be responsive to AI attacks that are happening within the organization and going forward? Well, let's talk about some ways of protecting the information that we have in our organization, right? So the first and easiest way that we can talk about protecting information inside of our organization is to worry about how much information that we have and should we have that information in the first place, right? So a couple of simple truths exist. Data hoarding happens all the time. I love the phrase data hoarding because it just reminds me of that. I feel like I'm watching a show on Discovery or on one of the networks that's probably running 17 times in a row that talks about the hoarders and those houses that are just filled with things that are going back on. Hoarding of information is so natural and so obvious that it's insane. We think about some of the rules. I talked about GDPR and PCI and some of the things earlier in this presentation. When we think about the most strenuous and onerous data retention policies that exist, the government has some of the worst ones, or the most difficult, I shouldn't say worst ones, the most difficult ones to be able to compete with. So when we think about it, the buzzwords are usually three sometimes, but really 5 years, 7 years, 10 years. 10 years is, how long do you have to hold personal data? A lot of banks and financial institutions, 10 years is the toughest that happens to go on there. Let's think about that just for a minute, okay? 10 years is 2015. That's 10 years ago. It's 2015. All right. I have socks that are older than 10 years old that are still sitting and still probably in production, or maybe I haven't touched them in a long time. Maybe they're still sitting in the bottom of the drawer and I haven't worried about it. You have got data that is probably 20 and 30 years old. I mean, 20-year-old data takes you to 2005. You're still in this millennia. It's ridiculous how tough it is. And having that data, how many people are still at the company where that data was created, that data is around? Having that information around is so challenging and so difficult to have. Why do we have data that's that old? It's because it's so easy to back the information up now onto cheap storage. It's so easy to use new and improved backup technologies that magically take this information away. We use the cloud as our backup excuse. I think about myself, and every month I see in my email box, I'll get a little note from Apple that says, thank you for your storage payment. And what is that storage? That storage is the backup of my iPhone that's there. Except it's not my iPhone. It's my iPhone, the one that I'm using now, plus the version that I used last time, and the iPhone 4 and the iPhone 2 and whatever. I've got backups upon backups of data that I haven't even seen forever. Right? We have to be able to be mindful of how easy it is for us to protect this data or to keep this data around and not really worry about getting rid of this data or making better decisions around it, right? The last two things that I have on this slide are, number one, it's easy to keep the data because a lot of times your business owners, the business lines feel better about it. Do you still have the information? Do we still have the originals? Do we still have those? They're still there. They're still there. They're still sitting in a locked file cabinet. They're over in a cloud somewhere that has limited access. So people feel better about knowing that the data still happens to be there. And then the last thing is that people don't have good data retention policies. We don't have strategies around keeping the data safe and understanding what should be in an organization and what shouldn't be in an organization. So let's talk about that a little bit. What about retention? How does that make it easier for us to share information internally and also with our third parties, right? Data retention, the easiest and most effective way to protect the data that you have in your organization is data deletion. Get rid of the data that you don't want to have. By deleting old data, data that people don't exist in your organization anymore, that is outdated, that has been archived but needs to be reduced or eliminated because you have some kind of retention policy that exists within your organization, reduces the risk of storing that information, ensures that you are compliant with your particular laws that you have to follow. It minimizes the risk of insider threats or having breaches happen and not knowing that somebody's touching the data because nobody owns the data that happens to be around there. Deletion of data optimizes and improves the performance of your servers. What is the difference? How fast do you think you can archive or index and search a file server if you have 1 million files versus having 500,000 files? It's just simple math. It's easy for us to be able to do that. And then lastly, if you don't have the data, you can't have that information taken to court or having it held against you at a later date. So these are all easy ways for us to be able to move forward and deal and go forward with it. Go forward with protecting your information. So what is the 3 simple takeaways that I would give you folks in terms of enhancing your data security posture today? Number 1, understanding your data sprawl, understanding your data boundary within your organization. Where does your data live? What type of data is it? Who actually owns that data? And most importantly, where are you sharing it with? When we think about third party is really about sharing the appropriate information that provides assurance and confidence to your partners or to your customers or to your customers' customers or your partners' partners. Right? We have to be able to know what that information is. So if we're going to share it, we need to make decisions around things like, should I share the actual file? Should I share a redacted version? I get my credit card statement. When that credit card statement comes to me, do I need to have all 16 digits or do I need to have the last 4 to know that it's my file? Do I need to have my social security on that information? Do I need to have my driver's license? How much information needs to actually be there versus not be there? Let's make those decisions and then let's take action on it. If you have neutered your data, if you have masked your data, if you have redacted your information, as that extends and expand or goes to third parties, it doesn't matter. There isn't loss of risk if there's nothing sensitive to be shared, right? If you're worrying about the information of what you had stored on your deck when you're sharing that information, that's just as not valuable as redacted credit card information or financial information. So just know that if you have made those decisions on the data itself, where the data has been created, then you are not reliant on where you're sending it, how you're sending it. Is the pipe secure? Is the data stored encrypted on disk, or any of the other variables about the targets? It's about the data, and it's about protection with that data. So knowing that, knowing those three cases, next slide, Sarah. We talk about PKWARE for one more moment, right? And here we say the PK Protect platform, say that 3 times fast. The PK Protect platform does a simple discovery and protect everywhere. What does everywhere mean? If you look at the slide, it means your endpoints. It means your file servers. It means your cloud repositories. It means SharePoint. It means OneDrive. It means S3 buckets and anywhere in AWS. It means Azure blobs. It means SQL. It means Oracle. It means data lakes. It means mainframe. It means anywhere. And so if I say I can find data anywhere, that means that you are consolidating the amount of products that you need to do discovery. One product versus 3 versus 4 versus 5. Less education that needs to happen to your users. You don't have to train them on 5 products because you only have to deal with one. And finding the data and providing assurance to that. PKWARE owns our data discovery engine. We invest in that data discovery engine. So a credit card is a credit card, and a home address is a home address, and a social security number is a social security number. So you don't have to worry about the false positives. The holy grail is fewest false positives, no false negatives, right? The false negatives are the worst, because if we thought it was safe, but it isn't safe, that's as bad as telling you that I thought I found something and you just have to go clean that up. We deal with all that stuff. That sounds great. Guess what else? We protect it. We protect it with masking, with encryption, with classification, with deletion, with tombstoning, with redaction. There's all sorts. And what is the right one to do? It's the one you want to be able to do in your organization. We give you the choice. We don't care. We want to allow you to have the success to be able to deal with that stuff. So having that platform, having our ability to do that means that we preemptively can solve this problem. As the file is created, I saw a credit card, let's encrypt it as that file hits disk. How long am I keeping that file? Let's give you visibility to how long data has been sitting. Is it 3 years? Is it 5 years? Is it 7 years, et cetera? We are continually monitoring that information via a PCI policy or a HIPAA policy or a PII policy, and be able to make that safe, knowing what information I can then share with my third parties. And just as importantly, probably equally importantly to anything else, is taking that production data, that important data that you have, and de-identifying it so that you can take it into your lower environments and thereby make your applications that you are building now safe and work within your environment, because it's the same data all the time, right? One platform, one place to be able to do it. We have a couple of people, some names that maybe you recognize. I would hope so, because that's the reason the slide's existing here, to say, wow, real people use this product. We are not worrying about the 3 and 5 person dental office in the corner. We're talking about real customers that have real problems, that work across the globe in some of the most important organizations and entities that exist. So that's who we are. That's what we do. Thanks for listening.
Thanks, EJ. We did have a couple of questions that came in. If you wouldn't mind, we have a few minutes here. You'd mentioned that third-party protection is a major thing that you guys help with. Does that also cover a fourth party as well? So essentially vendors of our vendors was the question.
Yes. So I understand the question, and we do it and you do it too. So we all will protect the information that we have. And the way that we would talk about that is that when you think about encryption, PKWARE can have an obvious encryption, right? I'm going to encrypt a file between you and I, or between just 2 individual people. PKWARE has what we call contingent protection, which allows you to not only have the file being encrypted between you and me, but we can also have a secondary key that's allowed for the enterprise to be able to view what information is being shared and whether that information should be shared or not. That secondary key can be handed to a process like a DLP process or some external process to make sure that piece of it works. Those keys that are creating to make this stuff happen are both internal, ones that we can talk about ourselves, or external keys, third-party keys, which allow us to be able to keep protection going to the third party and from that party to another party. So we have visibility to where that file is being sent, even if it goes 2 or 3 hops away. And encryption becomes the mechanism for you to provide visibility, provide assurance, and provide reliability in terms of what data is being shared and if it should be shared or not.
Thanks, EJ. Okay, so there was one more question that came in, and it says, you'd mentioned having some large bank and insurance customers. Can you talk a little bit about how they're utilizing PK Protect today, specifically around the encryption side of things?
Sure. So, couple of ways I would, I'll just talk in general about the which companies that we're talking about, but large banks use us in probably 3 different ways in terms of encryption. The first way in encryption is identifying and protecting sensitive information that exists at creation on endpoints in SharePoint and OneDrive. So as files are created, policies are put in place for us that say, if the file exists as it is being saved to disk, we are identifying that file, and based on policy, we're going to encrypt it. All that information happens at creation. The user doesn't have any decision to have to make within that stuff. It is done by policy and automation that allows that information to be saved and secure. Other companies are using this in larger data sets, so in pooled areas, so whether that is an S3 bucket, whether that is in part of their data lakes and Hadoop files. They are files that are being stored in those environments. They are being scanned, identified, and then protected based on those policies that happen to go back in. Most of them are PII and PCI related in terms of those pieces, but that's the way that those are used in that way.
All right, thanks, EJ. Looks like that's kind of all of the questions that we had come through. So with that, everyone, thank you so much for joining us. We will send you a recording of this webinar. Feel free to share that with your friends. And as always, if you have any questions, please reach out. We are at pkware.com. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, folks.